Hey, what's happening? Hey, y'all get ready for the We Talking Fatherhood show, hosted by Warren West, owner of I Love Life, co-hosted by LaVon Wesley, director of Project Game, Thomas Washington, president of Fathers Collaborative Council of Western PA, Melvin L., director of Coalition for Father and Families, Dante Works, owner of House of Veterans, Super Bowl champion Mike Logan, owner of Purpose Vision, and Brandon Phillips with Pittsburgh Public School Community Outreach. We talking fatherhood, we making moves. Ooh, yeah, you see us busting these moves. Right. We got a whole lot to gain and we ain't got nothing to lose. Yeah, we done all took losses, now we just get W.
Welcome to the We Talking Fatherhood show. I'm your host, Warren West. Co-hosting with me today, to my right, I got Brandon Phillips, Mike Logan. To my left, I got Mr. Works, Thomas Washington, and LaVon Wesley. Our special guest today is Eric Sewell, Director of Continued Education for Penn State, Greater Allegheny.
Yep.
Thank you guys for showing up once again, being consistent, being the consistent fathers that you guys are. Wanted to come out to this place of continued education to continue to educate our fathers about just some of the things that we need to think about, some of the mindsets that we need to change, some of the habits that we need to create. Our first part of our conversation, which is, I call this creating the two faces in the child, right? So what I mean by creating the two faces. So, I grew up in a household with a mother and a father. When I was about 6 years old, they got divorced. Now, when my mother and father were together, the household felt different, right? There was a mother, there was a father, there was a structure, there was an expectation that if something didn't happen, I got to go see the man, right? And if the man got me, I'm gonna go see mom so she can make sure it's okay. But see, when the divorce happened and then the man left, right? And he went off and did whatever he did, now our relationship, me and mom, is a little tighter, a little closer. And so even the hurt that mom feels, even the questions that mom has, sometimes she's telling me, and I'm a kid, right? And so now I gotta go back and see my dad. I'm a kid, I don't really know what none of this stuff means, but I gotta act like I never heard that. I gotta act like I didn't overhear her telling Aunt Shelly that you did this and that. And then not only that, I have to act normal, my dad hugs me and now it's a weirdness, but dad feels it now, right? And now there's not this openness because now this kid is now feeling like he's hiding something from the father, right? And this kid loves the dad and hangs out with the dad, and then the kid got to go back with mom. And then now the kid has to act like he didn't have a good time with dad, like he doesn't love his father, and he's always on mom's side. So, back to the original question, the effects of the divorce, the effects of broken relationships, how does that affect the mentality of our children?
Well, for me, what I take from that is you're actually changing the roles of what the child is supposed to do. As a man, as a male child, what you gonna do? I'm gonna now step up and be head of household because I gotta protect my mother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm gonna go out and provide and try to do what I can by the works of my hands. So now, instead of being a child, I'm now becoming the man of the house. And we take pride in that, so our roles are gonna change. You know what I'm saying? Whether that be throwing your emotions and your burdens behind you because you don't want to express yourself, because you want to be looked at as a man. So now they can't react genuinely and just be a kid, and the things that may have affected them, it don't affect them no more. but it really does affect them because they're hiding that. You know what I'm saying? So I know the effects of that. My parents separated when I was young, and the dynamic was different because my dad was the provider, protector, administrator, disciplinary person in the head of the household. But when he left, it became on me. And now I'm giving the directives and trying to, almost fill the gap of being a child and being the husband, per se, in the household. And, you get good and bad from that. I was able to grasp some leadership qualities from that. I was able to, bring my younger siblings up and have that, under me, but that ain't right. You know what I'm saying? I'm supposed to be a child. I'm supposed to be enjoying that childhood and being taught something from, the head of household.
It changes your whole trajectory of life.
Right.
Because like you said, I can attest to it, and I'm still like a father figure to my siblings. It not only changes your trajectory of life, it changes your relationship with your siblings. My siblings hid things from me because I'm the dad. So don't let they call me man, don't let man find out about this, or whatever the case may be. So I'm 35 and I'm just now getting to a brother, sister, brother relationship with my siblings now, to where they know there's no punishment behind it or whatever, or some type of disciplinary action behind it, so it not only changes your dynamic with, your trajectory of life, but with your siblings. And then, like you said, you're your mom's man. Like, my mom don't got a man now. I always joke with her, like, man, I wish she had a man now. But when I was young, I wouldn't let I was a pit bull. I wouldn't let no one around my mom because, like you said, I felt like we were by ourselves. I didn't trust no guy. So I didn't like no guy. I didn't talk to no guy she brought around or give him the blues or whatever the case may be. And I became my mom's man since I was probably 8 years old all the way up to now still, So it changes your trajectory in life because now you're stressing as a kid. You probably had pressure to succeed in sports, athletically, academically for your family because now it ain't even about me. It's about, I want to make sure we're cool now. Your whole frame of thinking changes, So as an 18-year-old, you really 25 mentally because you still got the burden of being the man in your household. So, and your dad probably doesn't even know that half the time, So it really changes the trajectory of who you are totally. And it could be for the good, because it helped me a lot, but also it causes a lot of stress and things of that nature in the long run where people like, you don't even have fun, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't got time for that,
The good thing for me personally, though, is that my father was still there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He was still in the picture. So he's like, even though me and your mother ain't together, son, I still got this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's still having a relationship and rapport with my mother that saved me from having to fill that complete void.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that was the saving grace for me.
Well, that affects of brokenness, though, right? Because here's the thing, right? When you think about it, so I come from a broken home as well. So my mother and my father separated when I was 4. Never married, though. And one of the things that happened immediately, though, and my father was abusive, and we keep it 100. So my father put his hands on my mother, and I was 4, and I couldn't understand that. You know what I mean? But what happened was when they separated, my mother made a decision that she was never going to talk bad about my father, A, and that B, she was never going to take him out of my life. You know what I mean? So that changed my attitude from being I got to be the man to I'm still the kid. They just ain't together. You feel me? So at the end of the day, my dad, I never wanted for anything. You know what I mean? And no matter what my dad was feeling about my mother, because he tried to get back at her for probably 3 or 4 years after that. You know what I mean? But when she finally shut him down, he just left it alone. But at the same time, I never wanted for nothing. My sister wasn't my father's child, but she never wanted for nothing because he knew the responsibility that he had when he fathered me with this woman. You know what I mean? So he never gave up his responsibilities because of his shortcomings. So what we're talking about now is the residual effect, but the original mistake is the brokenness, right? So when you have broken people who come together and make children, you create broken children. You know what I'm saying? So at the root of this, when we get together, we need to not be in a broken state, and that means that if I'm broken, I shouldn't be having no kids. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, but we don't pay attention to that, right? Because it's all fun and games. You know what I mean? When you really silly and you having a good time, you feel me? But then this baby comes, right? And now everybody is culture shock. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, I think it has to go back to the root cause, right? So as men, we should be more responsible and not have children in a broken state, because all it's going to do is create a broken child in a broken situation.
Very true. Like, so I can only speak to my situation. My parents were together, so they're still married to this day. They've been together since they're 16 years old. So don't understand that. Don't understand that. But
And we've been together since I was 8. My wife and I've been together since we were 17. So we 20 years in. So
yeah. So and you know, I give them all the grace for that. My situation is me and my son's mother aren't together, right? So that broken piece, right, and understanding like how my sons felt. Like my oldest son is 13, my youngest son is 8. When I left, well, not left, me and her broke up, and I was displaced from the home. My youngest son was 2, so he really didn't understand. He didn't really see me around. He seen me there, but he didn't see me. He didn't really understand. But my oldest son seen everything, right? So like he and I talk about these things because he's like the father figure in the household for his mom, right? Even though his mom has somebody, he's still like, I take care of my little brother, make sure he's good, make sure he's going to school when I'm not around. But I see the effect on him because he feels like, oh man, I'm the man in the household. Like when I'm with dad, that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like that's not it. You're overseeing your brother. You're not taking care of your brother. You know, and those are two things too. Like kids have to understand. Like you're overseeing your sibling, making sure there's nothing wrong with it, but in the same sense, you're more or less, you're not taking that fathering role. And I think that sometimes he tries to take that fathering role because I hear him talk to him. I'm like, whoa, you the dad? He was like, nah, but I was like, nah, there ain't no buts. Like I'm here, don't worry about it. But I've always been in their lives. I've never left their side. So I think that's the one good thing too. Like when we talk about the aspects of like why that happens, is the communication piece is very important. And I like how you talked about like broken people, right? We don't know we're broken, right? We don't know anything is wrong until something happens, right? So us having kids, when we had kids, when I was 27, when I had my first son, I didn't know anything about fatherhood. I didn't know anything about this is the things you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to act. You're actually supposed to get married. I knew those things because I seen my mom and dad, but I didn't want to pattern that because I wanted to do my own thing. So being that way and understanding like, okay, I didn't get married. We weren't married. We weren't equally yoked, right? We didn't have a spiritual foundation. Like, and those are things that like I believe we have to understand. We have to instill in these kids. Like our children have to understand. You have to have some center of spirituality. And I know you're gonna hit on this all, but there has to be a center of spirituality in that whole content of a relationship, and then even working with your children and having your children understand. You said, how do we get children on a clear and narrow? And they understand they have to have a spiritual base, right? So if they don't have that base, I think the brokenness is going to continue to happen, and then kids are going to continue to get with kids that are broken, and that cycle continues. So I think those are things when we're looking at communication, having a spiritual foundation, looking at the norms and values, making sure those are aligned. And that constant communication between both parents. It doesn't matter if you're I think everybody co-parents, right? It doesn't matter, even if you're in the same household, you still co-parent. So when people talk about co-parenting, they always think you got to be outside the home to co-parent. No, y'all co-parent all the time inside the home because your view is a little different than her view, but y'all still have the same aligned goal, is what's best for the child. So when we're looking at those things, we have to think about that too.
So,
I queued you up. There you go.
So your first time with us, I rarely agree with everything.
I told you y'all would be right here.
I agree right now with everything that you guys have said. And we all say from our perspective, and like Mr. Wealthy said, our reality is our reality. And so from our reality, like what you said, I have to credit my mother because she was intentional about submitting those roles to me as the man of the house. She still maintained the authority figure in the house. She maintained the parenting and didn't, look to me to do those things as a good mother, And I know a lot of mothers don't do that. They say, hey, you're the man now. You're the man of the house. And so, I appreciate that my mother allowed me to remain a kid despite having a male figure in the house. And so I didn't have to, go and provide and all that. She did all those things. When we recognize those behaviors in our kids, we have to remind ourselves that parenting is an overflow of who we are. And so simply, if, for example, if this was a teacup on the saucer, everything that flows out of this, our kids are going to drink from the saucer. And so we have to remember our behavior, when we talk about our fathers or the husband or the wife, the kid is going to adopt to that. And so my mom was very intentional about not removing my father from the family, even though he removed himself. But she kind of just sat back and said, the compare and contrast, you'll see, and then I won't have to say anything, But when you do find out, then I'm still going to be here to consult you and care for you, and without having to say anything. And he did that for himself, And so, when I see, I try not. When I was a single parent, I had some help from different avenues, people. But as a single parent, I never bashed my son's mother. You know what I mean? Right or wrong, I never did it because it's their relationship is their relationship. And so I wanted to make sure my son seen that I had morals and values and character and integrity. And so, as angry as some situations I might have been, I maintained that thing that my mother maintained, that being intentional about allowing him to be the kid. And I would go in my room and fuss and cuss about what I need to cuss. But there was a boundary in parenting for me with my son in adult business. And I remember my mom saying, adults are talking. And so we got to get back to that, where now you have the parent and the child are friends. And so they had the same conversations. But, we grew up in an era where adults are talking, and you knew this doesn't have nothing to do with you.
Also, when you talk about that too, like accountability for self is very important in that whole aspect, right? So I think like when we first broke up, I didn't have accountability for self. Like it was easy to blame somebody else, to say like, man, it was her fault. She did X, Y, Z, la 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 la. And I remember talking to one of my mentors, and he was like, well, what was your part that you played in it? I was like, what? My part? Hold on, man. Nah, we talking about her. It was like, nah, your part. And it was like, so I had to really actually sit down and think about that too, because when it's so easy to blame somebody else, to say, it was their fault, they didn't do this, they weren't loving enough, or they didn't give me what I needed. But ultimately, you have to get what you need for yourself, right? And then what you add is add value to the relationship. So, like, those are things, like, I had to learn is for self. Like, I really had to start taking accountability for self and understanding, like, your stuff stink too, right? So it's just like, how do you navigate and move out of that? And I like that, because that accountability piece is very important. So I had to start taking accountability for self to make sure, like, my sons are accountable for what they do as well. So
let me ask y'all this, interject this on the question. So do you think the broken relationships are aiding to a multiple personality that we're creating in our children?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like what Dante said, your saucer pouring over thing is like that really hits on a lot of things, because and a lot of times when the parents split, it's ugly. So what, you got a scorned woman possibly, an angry man because he's dealing with the effects of a scorned woman now. So your child is watching this beef happen, and now you're setting a tone for what a relationship's supposed to look like, right? So you're telling them on one end, your mom might be saying, oh, that's where the bashing may come in. Don't pay attention to what your dad's doing. You don't want no man like this if she got a daughter or whatever the case may be. And then vice versa. Look at your dad. Look how your mom's doing this, man. This is why boo, 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 boo. So now your child's like, I'm not supposed to want anyone like any one of you guys, but at the same time, I'm about to fall for someone that's a combination of you guys because of what I'm seeing.
That's deep, and that's that self-reflection. You go back to that self-reflection point, right? So the day my mom and dad split, I'll never forget, and I was only 4 years old. So my dad hit my mom on that day, and it was the last day that she was going to accept him hitting her. And she fought back. And I saw on my dad's face all the guilt of all the times that he hit her that day. Because he was bigger, he was stronger, and he probably could have hurt her. But the fact that she fought back, and we talk about bullying all the time, right? The fact that she fought back, it caused him to reflect on himself. He couldn't say anything. So I'll never forget sitting on my dad's front steps with a paper bag with all my belongings in it, waiting for a jitney to come and get us from the north side, you know what I mean, and take us anywhere. Because my mother, if you look at my mother's life, she was an orphan when she was 12. Both her parents were dead by the time she was 12, and she bounced between her brothers and sisters until she was old enough to get her own spot, you know what I mean? So, you know, that self-reflection piece is that cup spilling over, right? So the fact that my parents were able to take that 180 and go back to, okay, this is our son. He's more important than that pivotal moment when you hit me back. You know what I mean? Because he could have been at that place like, oh, you want to hit me? I ain't doing nothing for you or these kids. You know what I'm saying? And that was he took care of my sister too. You know what I mean? And ultimately my niece. You know what I mean? And then he died when I was 12. You feel me? So, you know, I was able to see that self-reckoning. And it caused me to now be the man that I am because I was able to reflect on self. Because I saw my dad reflect on self. I saw my mom reflect on self. But then over the years, I saw my mother deal with the effects of all the trauma that was never dealt with. You know what I mean? The fact that her parents were gone by the time she was 12. Then she has 2 children. Both of our dads are dead by the time I'm 12 years old. You know what I mean? So my mother is dealing with all of this on top of not being able to get a good job because she only has a GED. You know what I mean? So like I seen all of that. You know what I mean? But I did something different though. When I chose to say, all right, I'm taking a different path, right? And I'm not going to just follow in those footsteps, you know what I mean? Because my dad drank himself to death. So I'm not following those footsteps, you know what I mean? So I think there has to be a level of self-determination that we place into children, right? So that whenever they get to this place and they recognize these things, and that they've been drinking from this saucer of tainted milk, right? Let's call it that. That they can actually now move forward, because that's, at the end of the day, what it boils down to is a point of self-determination. So we can't always say, well, I guess we can put onus on the parents for not creating that environment where somebody can be self-determined. You know what I mean? But that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I also like to interject and say, I think while all these things are occurring, our children are understanding and learning how to deal with certain situations. And so they're developing an emotional quotient. They're developing the opportunity to say, when this arises, this is how I respond. And if they're looking at their father, if it's a male, this is how I respond. And again, it might be fighting. However, the other pieces to it is that they're experiencing other ways of dealing with emotions. They're going to school, and a teacher, if a teacher recognizes that a child comes to school every day, particularly a child of early childhood age, let's say 0 to 5, that teacher can help that child learn to deal with those emotions and help them to self-regulate in ways that maybe the parents never have taught them. And that's one of the huge aspects I see about early childhood, is that children can experience play therapy in their own way through dramatic play, and they can also use different tools to master the skills that they need to not let some of those pent up emotions come out, right, in maladaptive ways to where they're harming others and possibly trying to hurt themselves.
Man, I gotta say something though. Sitting at this table with y'all group of men, man, like we were all fortunate, because most of us here said that like when our parents split, the mother didn't bash the father. You know what I'm saying? And like I'm sitting here like kind of like, wow, you know what I'm saying? And you know, it takes me back to my point. If y'all know what in Pittsburgh, 400 Ross Street. Family division. Like my mom never sued my dad for child support. Never did that. And guess what? My dad was there every week breaking me off. I didn't want for nothing. You know what I'm saying? But now when you look at that, you know what I'm saying? Today it's like, I mean, I hate to say it, it's like, how much money can I get? And if you ain't doing this for your child, to the point where some people don't even get to see their child if they ain't, you know what I mean, putting out money or doing for their child. So it's like we're dealing with a whole different realm, because I never knew what it was like to be without a father, because he was always there, to the point where my dad was coming to pick me up from football practice, taking me home. We hitting McDonald's on the way, you know what I mean? So we chopping it up, having fellowship. He coming to get me and my boys and taking us to Pizza Hut. So I'm kind of like normalizing the relationship, because I'm like, this is cool. Like you said though, but I'm getting this with my dad, and then I'm chilling with my mom on the weekend and she's doing this. But now I'm seeing, and there was some of it when I was coming up, but I just didn't see it. But you're seeing now where that dad isn't there. One, because he may not want to be, because he's dealing with the mother, And two, you know, she may be trying to keep them away. You know what I mean? Or so.
You gotta look at those external factors, though, right? Because there's this thing in our country called media, right? And media drives our thoughts, whether we want to admit to it or not. Media drives our thoughts and sometimes dictates our actions. You feel me? And the media tells our women, black women, that you need to be independent black woman and do this whole thing on your own, right? So in some aspects, there's a little bit of her rejecting him, right? Because he can't do what she feels like he should be doing. You feel me? And then on the other level, it's you're taking $700 out of my paycheck every 2 weeks. That's all he need to see of me. You feel me? Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's the attitude that some people take, right? And this is and now that you have social media, you see 1,000 posts with those type of narratives, and it becomes this is our normal. You know what I mean? Instead of I'll post something about me and my family together, and it might three of y'all might see it. You post something about your baby moms, 1,000 people see it with the algorithm. You feel me? So at the end of the day, it becomes what our children are consuming. And what we're consuming, because I think we don't realize that the portal to our soul is right here behind these glasses. You feel me? Because what we see is what we internalize, and I think that becomes back to this whole point of this conversation. When we're talking about fathering, that's what it boils down to. My son told me last night at dinner. He said, "Dad, my homies is saying y'all too strict." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, because I got a bedtime and we eat dinner together and we pray together. Like they say now y'all doing too much." And I'm like, "No, bro, I'm setting the foundation." I said, you might not like it right now, but I promise you, no, I'm not. I said, in 10 years when you got your own kids, y'all gonna be eating together, y'all gonna be praying together, and you gonna be monitoring. I'm monitoring your phone. What's on your phone? What you looking at, bro? Let me see. You know what I mean? Like, no, that's just the way it works. I pay for that, cuz. What you mean I can't see that? Sound like me. You know what I mean?
That's so very true. But also, I think the methodology and ideology of the way people think and speak too. Right, so like you just said, baby's mom, right? I tell all the fathers, stop saying baby's mom, say child of your mother. I said child of your mother. Mother of your child. Look,
But what happens when that's what they're calling themselves?
Yeah, but that's bad. So they need to have their ideology changed too. Like we have to continue. If you speak it, it'll come to fruition. That's what they say all the time. If you believe, you keep saying it, because that term came from somewhere, right? So, and may come from 400 Rock Street. But
say what it is. You just know the address, bro.
400 Rock Street. If that came from down there too. But if we start telling these fathers, even if they're taking money out of your check, that's a tough situation. However, your obligation is your child, regardless of whatever that look like. I understand, that's a burden, and fathers may have a hard and difficult time with being able to see their children. However, there's as much as there's rules in place for child support, there's rules in place for custody. So you have to be able to fight for both if that's the case, right?
Systemically, though, we already know that family court don't go well for dads. If we look at it in totality.
In totality, true. But the system has, especially in Allegheny County, judges are being more understanding of the situation. Right?
Maybe
judges.
No. What's the S word you said?
What?
The system?
The system.
Bro, it is what it is.
The system is the system. However, we can't change the system if we don't push to change the system instead of complaining.
Agreed.
Right?
So way though?
You have to push it from the top down and from the bottom up. It's both. It's a both ad. You need people in place to understand the situations of fathers, and you also need the grassroots individuals pushing that as well, such as organizations.
I think the people doing it, they definitely understand the situation of fathers. It's purposely done. But with that being said, I got two things I want to hit. So I agree with you on the custody aspect of things. You want to have your custody rights. You're 100% right about that. I can speak from a standpoint of paying child support before. Fortunately, I'm not where I used to be, but I was paying $800 a month basically in child support. I had to pick up another job just to maintain my bills, right? So I got two jobs. The other job I'm almost working 40 hours a week on. When do I have time to spend with my child? So now I'm getting a complaint from the mom, but I gotta keep this up because I need to pay you this money or I'm going to jail. And they got me in arrears. And you won't take me off of this child support, or you won't be reasonable with the child support. You understand what I'm saying? So those are things that become an issue as well, and that's why the system how it is, because there's always going to create a rift somehow, some way. It's always going to create a rift somehow, some way, because let's be real. You don't think some of those lawmakers have had to pay child support? So they know that how it's functioning, and they know, okay, if this man is paying this, when you go in there, when you go in the courts, how much you make, that's what you pay. That's it. You don't ask me how much, what bills I got. You don't ask me if I got an IRA for my kid. I was like, look, I told you, I got an IRA for it. Don't matter. Boom, 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 boom. And it was just like, wow, you don't even know what I do for my child.
Keep it a bean though, bro. And I'm full disclosure. I got this thing right here. I ain't never paying child support. Cause
you right.
All my kids is by the same woman. And I want to go back to the heart of it. So the heart of it was the broken people dealing with broken people. And it leads to these consequences, right? So, if we teach our children, there's consequences to every action. You feel me? So again, I put a post on Facebook today. Just having sex don't make you a man. You know what I mean? But it can make you a father. You know what I mean? So you better be mindful of what you're doing when you do this thing. At the end of the day, that's where it all goes back to. You had sex with somebody you probably shouldn't have because you didn't know her, she didn't know you, and it was fun. You feel me? At the end of the day. So at the end of the day, get you one of these, and we don't have to talk about court.
For 30 years, Healthy Starts has been making sure that babies in Allegheny County reach their first birthday. Did you know that Healthy Start not only supports the mother and child, but we are here to support fathers as well? Here at Healthy Starts, we know and appreciate that fathers play a very important, necessary role in their child's early development. We have the support fathers need to understand and engage for a healthy pregnancy as well as the early development of your child. But that starts with taking care of you. If you have a partner who is pregnant, let us support you both through this life-changing journey. Reach out.
So is marriage and family still the goal?
Yes.
Is that still the goal?
Still the goal? I don't think that's the worldly goal.
I'm talking about for our community, for our families, because we talked about the numbers of single parent homes. Right. We talked about the fatherlessness. So are we promoting being married?
We talked about that earlier today.
On camera,
we talked about this earlier.
Let's be real though.
It depends on what it looks like. What does it look like though?
But I think
marriage is being portrayed. Look, we talked about this earlier today.
Right. The portrayal.
What is it being portrayed in the public eye? Then we talked about what does it look like to around you, to your family members who are married, like as far as your experiences with your uncles and aunties who might have been married. Does that look good to you? Because if it don't look good to you, I've had family members tell me, don't ever get married.
But you
flat out. But you flat out. Seriously,
don't do it.
I'm not playing. Don't ever get married.
Allow past experiences and other people's experiences to be our moral compass. Yeah. So you might have a bad marriage, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna have a bad marriage. It goes back to ownership. I don't care how many divorces have been in my family, doesn't require for me to get a divorce if I get married. And what it should do is motivate me to break that generational curse of not being married. Okay. But does marriage work? I think it's going to give you, it works, yes it works. Will it give you another layer of family? Yes it will. Will it give you another layer of bond? Yes it will. But like he said, people are entering into each other's courses sexually, not knowing the course that the other person is on, and then find out you're headed left and I'm going right, I got to go. So being in a healthy marriage, because not all marriages are healthy, will definitely increase the statistics of having less
Are these things realistic? But are they realistic?
That's absolutely to get married though. Have you ever seen it where you like, oh, this is a good look, I should do this?
I mean, my thing is, are we promoting marriage? That's my question.
No.
Where we got
I don't think as a culture and community we are not.
Oh, am I?
No way.
You know what I'm saying? Like it is. Listen,
but as a culture,
so as a culture, it's bros over hoes though. You know what I'm saying? I hear young boys say that all the time. You gonna go with her or you gonna be with us? That's what the culture is putting out there right now.
But here's the thing. If we get down to the heart of this thing, right? We don't train our daughters to require anything of men. let's just keep it a bean. Everybody in here has a woman that has allowed you to take advantage of them, including the pastor, right? So, and we have all taken advantage of the opportunity. So we're not training our daughters to have expectations. So my life changed when I met my wife, before I was a pastor, before I was saved. My wife said to me, I will not be with a man who gets high and gets drunk. And I will not marry a man who will not at least attend church with me. You ain't got to be saved. You ain't got to be this, that, and the third, but you got to go to church. So she gave me those expectations up front in dating. You feel me? So I had to make a decision at that point. And I want to be with this chick right here who acting all this, that, and third. I had to make a decision. I was feeling her, so I said, you know what? I can bang with that. That's cool. You know what I mean? And lo and behold, I find myself in church, and all of a sudden, I'm saved. You know what I mean? And then a few years later, I'm a pastor, right? But she put that out there up front. If we teach our daughters that you need to have expectations and levels of what you will and will not accept, then the game changes. The young women control the game at the end of the day because they have something that we want. Period. Point blank. And if you give it up for anything, then you're going to get anything. And then what happens? Go back to the main point. We got broken people creating broken people. My fault.
So, no, that's beautiful. So I just want to fast forward it to this generation and how, bro, like, they're hitting and leaving.
Like,
they're doing what the dudes was doing.
the young girls, the young girls are hitting and leaving.
That's what I'm
They
saying.
don't want-
They caught on to the game. They changed the game. What happens though? What happens? You adapt.
Right, but
True.
is that right? Is that so? Just because the men are doing it, I can do what the men are. Is that right?
Guess where it came from? The cup. It spilled over. Their moms was doing this. Their mom was banging dudes, and we say now we taking that $40. The joke is the $40, right? I'm getting that $40 on the nightstand. I see mom getting it like that. Mom got a new TV, the new couch. He ain't staying here. She ain't got no responsibility with this cat. Like, she don't got to love this dude. He breaking her off. Let's get it. You know what I mean? They adapted.
So now I would have to say, I would have to agree with that marriage is not the goal for the kids.
Goal, what
It's
does
get
marriage
money.
look like though? To them, if it's not appealing, what's appealing is money. Like you said, the women are acting like men, dog. All you gotta do is, like you said, you turn on the TV, when they go to music, even we talking about R&B music, the R&B music sound like a dude, you can tell a dude wrote the lyrics, it's just like everything is no femininity,
It's
going on right
uncensored.
there. So with that being said, the thing is, how do we fix it in 2021? Because a lot of the things that we're talking about when it comes to a foundational piece on the religious side of things, see, I got a different lens when it comes to marriage. So if we went back to the 1940s and 50s, marriage, when it comes to divorce, what? You probably had 10, 20, 15% divorce rate max. Because why? Culturally, it was frowned upon, right? So you had bad marriages going on for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
And simply stayed together because socially that's what the norm was. Then it changed in the 80s and 70s and 80s when you start having the feminist movement and things of that nature, right? So now we're done with these bad relationships. We're getting divorces. We're cool with that. We're out of here. So now that opened Pandora's box now, right? So culturally, our culture has shifted dramatically to where it's like, okay, where is the foundation? If religion is going to be the foundation, you got a lot of things you got to patch up when it comes to religion, right?
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like so marriage is not being promoted partially because some people don't trust religion. Some people don't know which religion to turn to, which one fits them. There's so many to choose from, right? Then it's like, who do I believe? What best fits me? You know, how do I get eased into religion? Because the approach is sometimes wrong and things of that nature, right? So if we go back to, let's say the 80s, when crack hit, you're going 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s, now here into the second half of the 2000s or whatnot. These are all broken homes at this point in time, and religion is not really prevalent in those households. So now we got to go back all these different generations to try to figure out, okay, how we going to fix this in 2021 when the content to which we're talking about is so prevalent out here that is not promoting marriage, promoting being single, promoting, like you said, hitting them out on both sides of the party fields, men and women, or whatever the case may be. So it's almost like, where do we start to get people to buy into? Because let's be real, I think we do in our let's say in the black race, we do want marriage. I think we do deep down. Because at the end of the day, if you do listen to a lot of these entertainers, I'm just taking it to the music aspect with these young kids, they singing about some emotional stuff a lot of the times. They want it, they don't know how to express it, they don't know what it looks like. They've been dogged, both sides, women and men on both sides. So now it's kind of like they don't even know where to get it from because they can't have a conversation with their mom. That's like me having a conversation with my mom about how to have a good relationship. I can't because my mom's never been in one. You understand? And when I've tried, I came to the realization like, dang, I can't have this conversation with you. So there's millions of kids out here, young, early teens, late teens, or early 20s who don't even have, who can I turn to have this conversation with, who's not going to judge me, be on the same eye level as myself, and not be talking about something that's 1940, 50, 60. I'm not trying to hear that. So it's like, how do we relate? Is really where I think we need to figure out to where we're able to bring in those fundamental things and foundational things and make them relatable to what's going on.
Well,
here.
here's something on the head when you talk about religion, because religion has a reckoning of its own, right? Because religion had portrayed marriage as one way and was turning a blind eye to things that were happening in the marriage, right? Because if you look at the church, we say, who's in the church? It's 80% women and 20% men. All 80% of those women are in the church are married. So where's the other 60% of the men at, right, that are married to those women? So we have broken relationships in the church. So when a kid from the outside is looking in saying, I want to explore this religion thing, but I'm looking in here and I see all the dysfunction because it's out in our face. You feel me? So so the church has some reckoning to come to ourselves, right? That we need to be able to fix some things and be transparent, open with young people about what it really is supposed to look like. Because at the end of the day, we'll say a successful marriage is Jay-Z and Beyonce, who probably don't spend no time together because she on the road, he on the road. You know what I mean? They come together and we got Blue Ivy and they go back out on the road. You feel me? And the kids say, that's the power marriage, the power couple. I want to be like that. You feel me? Everybody ain't going to be like that because y'all going to be working regular jobs, struggling through these bills, right? And dealing with these streets and your kids out here trying to do this, that, and the third. You ain't going to have Blue Ivy. That's not what you're going to have. You're going to have Joey. You feel me? At the end of the day. So, so there's a lot of reckoning that needs to take place, right? And we need to be able to be open and honest and say, we did it wrong, but here's how you do it.
The difference between religion, for the people who don't know, the difference between religion and spirituality, if you guys could, kind of characterize each one of those.
So I don't say spirituality, I say relationship, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all religious at something, right? So religious is a continual practice that you do on a consistent basis, right? So you can be religious about combing your beard, you know what I mean? Your joint look pretty nice. My joint kind of raggedy, but you comb it, you know what I mean? So, that you can be religious about that, you know what I mean? But, and I'm only speaking from a Christian perspective, right? So when I say relationship, and when I say I'm a Christian, that means that I'm a follower of Christ, right? So I need to have a relationship with who I'm following. You know what I mean? And I only gain that relationship through what we call prayer, fasting, supplication, right? So, religion is something that you just do. You know what I mean? And it doesn't really, in my purview, there's not a lot of merit to being religious, right? Because religious just means that you're practicing something, right? And relationship means that I embody what I say I believe in. You know what I mean? And that can be, and that goes across anything, right? So even Islam, you got to have a relationship with what you say who you are. You know what I mean? And for so long, and I go back to that reckoning piece, the church has told us just to practice, right? So as long as you don't do these things, then you're considered a Christian, whether you have a relationship or not. You know what I mean? Just don't smoke, don't drink, don't this, don't that. And then you got people in the 80s. So all the 80s babies don't go to church and their kids didn't go to church. You know what I mean? Because they're like, listen, all the people who were young people in 20s, 16 to 20s in the 80s, they don't go to church because they were just taught that this is just what you don't do. But back to your point of where you are now, you're like, okay, I'm over all the don't do's, right? And now I still want to have this relationship because I believe in the value of what I have read and what I have learned. So now you're at this point where I want to develop a relationship. And that's the most beautiful part about it, right? So the Bible tells us, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not what? He will not depart. So even though those 80s babies, it was imparted in them, so now they're all coming back to it. But now we just had, to answer your question, relationship. It's all about relationship. It's not about practicing something. I can say, I can't stand when somebody says, I go to this church. Oh, that's great. You know what I mean? A lot of people go to a church, but they don't have a relationship. You know what I mean? You can go to a church every Sunday and not have a relationship and be as lost as you were before the day you came in there. But when you gain a relationship, you have what we call spiritual maturity. You go from milk to meat, right? So when you begin to feast on meat, now you have a relationship to where I don't necessarily need the pastor to guide me. His words will inspire me, but I'm guided by my personal reading and my personal relationship, right? So to answer your question, that's the difference.
So that was, I mean, well said. There's nothing else I need to say about that. I think the tricky part, if you want to go from a spiritual religious perspective, is how do we get fathers who aren't spiritual to still be fathers? Because there are going to be some fathers who won't make that conversion. And so how do we inspire them to become fathers, even if they're in a different religion, spirituality, or they don't care about religion at all? So we have to still talk about being a father. I absolutely 100% believe that following and being a believer of Christ, you're going to be a great father with some setbacks, but at the end of the day, it's going to turn out to the good. But we're finding that a lot of people don't have any core religion or spiritual value system, so we need to talk to the guys who don't have that and say, how can you still be a good father without being tapped into your heavenly father, your spiritual father? And so one thing that you had said earlier, we all had told the story of our upcoming and the trials and tribulations that we ever come to get here, but I think the common thread that I heard is that we all made a decision at some point to say we're not going to be that man. And so as fathers who are watching this, we have to hold you accountable and say, when will you be accountable for your child? When are you going to own your child? And once you do that, then we can, spiritual or not, now we can talk about being fathers, but you first have to hold yourself accountable and get rid of the excuses. That was episode 1. I was talking about the excuses. Excuses are monuments of nothingness to build bridges of nowhere that leads to places of incompetence. We know this, but when are you going to say it's my responsibility? I'm going to choose. It becomes a teen road. Why? You have to choose if you're going to be a good father. Whether you know Christ or not, whether you know Muhammad or not, whether you know Buddha or not, you have to decide, am I going to be a good father? What does that look like? It looks like a whole bunch of things other than jail, having another kid outside of wedlock, all of those things, but we have to make that decision. Once you make the decision, now the other pieces of the puzzle can start to come together, but the keystone, I believe, outside of, for me, it would be Christ-centered, but for people who aren't Christ-centered, the keystone is going to be ownership and accountability.
It's the principles, right? So when we talk about the 10 Commandments, those are things that, whether you're a Christ believer or not, are things that are just, that should be natural to us, right? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet that neighbor's wife. Like those are things that you don't have to say you're a Christian, believing in God, or come to church. I don't care. I want everybody to live by those things, right? So to answer your question, how do we get those fathers who don't want to be connected to spirituality or to faith at all? It's that these are just basic principles of life to get good outcomes, period. You get the outcome when you do these things. When you don't kill nobody, you ain't going to jail, cuz. When you don't steal, you ain't going to jail, bro. Like, I'll say that.
And the laws are good, but we also know the New Testament says we're no longer under law, we're now under grace. And so now that we have grace, there's a little bit, but it doesn't say, it says also, because we're under grace, we're going to continue to sin. No, we shall not. However, the law was for people who were out of sin, who were trying to stay out of sin. So my thing is, if we're going to talk religion, let's talk religion. But if we're not, and I think most of our viewing audience is going to have some different religions. You know, even if Mr. Mel was here, we're going to have a different religious perspective. So we have to keep it to the point where how can we be fathers without, if you have no religion?
We got to start reading, though. They got to start reading a little bit. Like, to your point, one of you guys made a point kind of where like the religious part doesn't have to be the center. It's just, or it might be the spiritual. You just need to be spiritual, and then kind of to your the 10 Commandments. When I started reading, it started to expose me to a little bit more. I'm not a huge faith-based guy. I'm a believer in God. I've mentioned this before. I believe in God. I pray to God. When it comes to a certain denomination, I don't have one. But, and I always bring this book up, man, and I can't believe it. Joel Osteen, Every Day's a Friday. I don't know what made me grab this book. I grabbed this book. He broke the Bible down to where you can implement. It was almost like your moral compass to where you could implement it into your day-to-day. So he set it up to where it was a short scripture, maybe two sentences of a scripture, and then showed you how it's applicable to your day-to-day to be a better man in general, you know? So it's like being able to blend the religious part to it, because he's coming from a Christian point of view. And he says it like, yo, I'm coming from this point of view, but I'm not trying to throw this down your throat. Here's the scripture right here, boom. Then he gives you a quick little summary of a story about how it applied to his life and how it changed him and how you can move forward with it if you choose to do so. So we got to figure out a way to make this, to allow this to be tasteful for them to regurgitate. Like, almost like when we push into the CISP or push into schools, when I'm bringing information, it's all positive. The reason why I'm able to get, the results, we're able to get the results that we want from these kids, the positive results, is because we're giving them information in a certain way that they're going to want to regurgitate. It tastes good to them. It's about their culture. It's about, so it's like we got to figure out a way to not, to make it to where it looks tasteful and it's edible, and they want to keep.
It's funny because when you talk about that, I talked to my mom. My mom is definitely very, very religious. She said, everything that you need is in this book. I said, what book? She's like, the Bible. I said, yeah, right, whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever. Hey, okay, whatever. She's like, nah, for real. Everything that you need is in this book. So it was crazy because she's like, even fatherhood. You talk about fatherhood, you talk about, it's in the book. So we went through, I read a scripture. I said, oh, it is in the book. Like, this is in the book. She's like, see, I told you. I said, everything you need is in this book. So I think, like, even as you're talking about tasteful pieces, like, even if you Google, and you they can do it on their phone, talk about, like, positive things in the Bible about fatherhood. Boom, it'll come up with a whole list. Casket reader. You know what I mean? Things about being in anxiety and depression and all of that stuff is in a book, right? Like, everything that you need is in that book. It's just people don't want to open up the book. Right?
You're giving too much, right? You're giving them too much, but you're asking them to do too much.
But
and that's unfortunate.
But that's
the
they
truth.
believe in that.
You don't have
There's a bunch of different religions.
But you don't have to believe in the book to understand that the content in it is real.
relatable.
It's relatable. You know what I mean? So that's the thing.
The thing is, when you talked about, are we promoting marriage, is that the goal? We're not, because we're not a society now that is based on some religious or moral compass. You know what I mean? Period. Because when I'm sitting with a group of men, and I call myself a Christian because I am a follower of Christ, and if I come to the table and I just say, anything about God or the Bible, half of them's going to check out right then. Because the way the Bible defines marriage is a man and a woman, one woman, you know what I'm saying? Half of them's going to check out right there because there's a different definition of what marriage is now. You know what I'm saying? If y'all know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so, we aren't promoting that. So it's very difficult for me to come into a room and say, this is what marriage looks like, because they're automatically not going to agree. And like you said, you can find all those answers in the Bible. The Bible, to me, is really about fatherhood. It's about a relationship with God the Father, who's given us his only begotten son. You know what I'm saying? It's about a relationship. The whole Bible is based on a relationship of God giving up his son. You know what I mean? That's fatherhood right there. That's a definition of fatherhood.
Pastor, we're going to have a side conversation because we're going to talk about being a fatherless son in the Bible as well. And people are always looking at that.
Right.
So we got to talk about that.
The other thing I'd like to just touch upon is that there are these things I learned about called the tenets of Ma'at, right? Ancient civilization. And they were just commitments, right? Tenets and commitments. And I think when you look at the commandments, you can look at them similarly, right? But I would say that Ma'at would be centered around culture, and Ma'at will also be centered around a way of life not connected to a certain religion. And I believe that folks would grab a hold of those. I hope the viewers maybe check it out. What I'm talking about, Ma'at, what is he talking about? But at that point, I do believe folks will sort of want to commit to exist in a certain way. And even when you begin to look at things and people and society through a trauma-informed lens, there are 7 commitments that we're supposed to center ourselves around. And so I trust that we might just say, hey, let's just deal with my commitment.
That's really the bottom line, though, because at the end of the day, that's the bottom. You really, to me, hit the nail on the head. You have to remove that piece and make it a cultural thing for your country. And see, that's what. And I was actually going to try to bring this question up. Do you think we can get to that point in the United States, the way the United States is structured? You got to think about it. We are moving further and further away from what the United States used to be, good and bad. To an extent, right? Because even with that being said, if we talk about, you know, early 1900s, 1800s, well, let's say the early 1900s, okay, we were still being oppressed heavily, systematically, and just in general. Lynching, things of that nature was still going on. But if you looked at the black families were a little bit tighter knit.
The community was stronger.
It was stronger, right? For reasons that we had to only depend on our own and trust our own, but also some of that was a cultural thing that they seen being here in the United States. You know what I'm saying?
But some of that we brought from Africa with us.
Yes, and you're right. I'm wrong. So you're 100% right. So now we're getting further and further and further and further away from that, and now we're more and more and more and more accepting of almost whatever. Because we have to.
I always explain it like this, Levon. I think that, you know, the black community took a turn when we adopted the American dream. Because there was a time when we were told the American dream wasn't accessible to us. So when we were able to access the American dream, our community began to deteriorate. Because when they told us, when they sold us, you can have the dream, they didn't give us access to the capital and or the property right to get what they have. So you have access to the dream, but you really don't, right? Because then we have things like redlining, and we have things like Jim Crow, right? So you know where we are right now. If we keep it a bean, it's systematic, right? So where we've ended up today is partly based on a system that brought us here, that kept us here, and that's keeping us here, right? Because in essence, we make people rich. You feel me? You know, the black community makes people rich. When we talk about welfare and we talk about all of these things, you know, there's a reason why there's $3 generals in a community like Duquesne, but we can't get a Giant Eagle.
I would like you guys to speak to the guys who are the products of those broken relationships, who are currently in the broken relationship, who currently have the issue with the mom and currently are doing some of the negative, portraying the negative things, spilling out on a saucer to their kids. Can we speak something encouraging, inspiring to those guys to get them to kind of see from our perspective?
So to speak to that guy, right? To that guy, and as a pastor, I'm actually speaking to these guys all the time, right? So, you know, my church is different than most churches. I don't have a bunch of deacons and older folks. Our church is only 7 years old. My wife and I founded it together with one of my best friends, right? So we got some young guys who got, you know, 2 feet in the street, but they still respect us, you feel me? So I'm ministering to these young men all the time, you know what I mean? And my advice to you is, it's just self-reflection, you know what I mean? It's own your past, right? Own your past, own your responsibility in the place that we're in right now, right? And then chart a path on how you're going to move forward, not only for yourself, but for your child at the end of the day. Because right at this point, I made a decision whenever my wife and I, we got married, we had a son a year later. I made a decision that my life was no longer about me, it was about my son. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, because my father left here when he was 12, when I was 12, because of alcoholism and cigarettes, you feel me? And I decided that I wasn't going to do that, you know what I mean? And I'll just tell you, you know, even as a pastor, 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes. All of my mother's brothers and sisters left this earth because of heart disease and diabetes. So 5 years ago, I had to make a decision, right? Even as a pastor, doing pretty good, got a degree, got a nice job, got a house, you know, all these things that seemingly are successful, but I'm failing in one area of my life, you know what I mean? And my sons need to see me win in that area of my life. So 5 years ago, I lost 100 pounds, you know what I mean? Because I went to the doctors and I said, listen, I'm trying to win. How do I win? I said, I don't want to take no medicine. She said, how do you win? She said, you come back here lose 50 pounds in 6 months and I'll take you off the medicine. Guess what happened? 6 months later, I was down 60 pounds and I gave her back those pills, you feel me? So, but it took me recognizing self at the end of the day, because I said, what mistakes have I made to put me in this position? And I can say, oh, it's hereditary. Everybody in my family got diabetes. I'm going to just roll with it, you know what I mean? And then we say the same thing. My dad was a bad dad. His dad was a bad dad. I was destined.
My granddad was a slave.
I was destined to be a bad dad. You know what I'm saying?
I'm a slave.
So at the end of the day, it's like, all right, understanding all your past, but recognizing that there's a future for you and for your child. and for whomever you're with. You know what I mean? From a woman perspective, like, you know, my wife is just as important to me as my kids, and her mental and spiritual well-being is just as important to me as my kids. So, you know, it's not about me no more. So, bro, unfortunately, it's not about you.
What I would say to that is, and I'm bringing it back up, stay away from 400 Rock Street as best you can, because it's called family division for a reason. And if you can respect and work things out with your significant other, if you're not with her no more, it makes it easier because you're not putting it in somebody else's hands for you to have to deal with the situation. And you got to think about it. The kid is yours and hers. It's not theirs. When you bring them into the equation, it messes things up because you're letting somebody divide you. And that's usually what happens in the relationship. Somebody comes in and divides the relationship. So even if you're not with her, if you can have that respect, if you can have that communication line with her, develop a rapport and understand that, okay, we ain't together, but we both want to do what's best for our child. We both want to be providers. There's no man. If you want to truly be defined as a man, you want to provide for your child. If you don't want to provide for your child, I don't consider you no man. You ain't no father. You know what I mean? If you don't want to be bothered with your child, everybody wants to be involved with their child. So work together. It's going to be hard, yes, but what things in life aren't hard? You know what I'm saying? The greater reward is going to be more rewarding than the adversity that you go through. So please, man, if you can do that, just, you know, and you got to put yourself down. You got to humble yourself. Happened to me. I had to humble myself. You know what I'm saying? I had to look inside and say, bro, you was doing some things that was wild. I had some narcissistic behaviors going on, but I would never admit that before. I found my vulnerabilities, I accepted them, but I'm doing something about them. I ain't gonna just stay in that state. And that's how I was able to overcome it.
Thank you guys for joining us. We had a dope conversation once again. Fellas, I appreciate all the jewels you dropped today. Fellas, I need y'all to pick them up. All right, we talking fatherhood. We will see y'all next show.
We making moves. Ooh, yeah. You see us busting these moves. Yeah, right. We got a whole lot to gain and we ain't got nothing to lose. Yeah, we done all took losses. Now we just get W's.
What up, y'all? It's your boy Warren West, Coach Warren, aka Mr. Fatherhood. We talking fatherhood. This is the We Talking Fatherhood survey video. Listen, if you got something you want us to talk about, fatherhood is close to your heart. What I need y'all to do is, if y'all want to be a part of the show, if you want to be a part of our video segment, shoot me about a 10, 15 second video. Ask your questions, give your concerns, and me and my crew will tackle the topic. I want to hear from the people. And we'll do our due diligence to bring you some good information. So drop the 15-second video, ask your questions, give your concerns, and then we'll weigh in on it. Drop it to me at warrenwest412@gmail.com. We talking fatherhood, man. You feel me?
Yeah, we come in the name of the Father, so it ain't no way we can lose. Ooh, yeah. You see us busting these moves. You see it? We got a whole lot to gain and we ain't got nothing to lose. Yeah, we done all took losses. Now we just get W's. Yeah, we come in the name of the Father, so it ain't no way we can lose. Ooh.
It's the King Eat Bets, one and only, live in effect. I just dropped that 10 Commandments to the streets. I need you to go and get that. It's on all digital platforms. Listen, it's one of the realest. I ain't gonna say the hottest because there's a lot of hot stuff out here, but everything ain't real. So look, go cop that 10 Commandments to the streets. Shout out to the boy Big Warren West. Shout out to my brother B Type of Money. We out here, we trying to change lives. We trying to build lives. Holla at us.
Hey! What's happening? It's the king, the one and only new type of money. Hey, check this. I need y'all to go do me a favor, man. Go stream, download, and purchase that I Am His Story EP. It's available on all platforms. Hey, I also want y'all to check out that NTM 103. I just dropped that, and you can go check that out at newtypeofmoney.bandcamp.com. Hey, we taking flight. This shit's up there and it's stuck there for real.
Keep both eyes open, watch me win. Whole squad 2K, created men. And I ride with the God who created men. Never mind the small stuff, that's how you dodge the pen. I'm a king in this world, you can't lock me in. I keep the keys and the jewels, you better lock me in.